Among the Merfolk, the Golden Mermen are revered above all. The female who bears a Golden Merman grants her consort the throne and secures her own place as queen. In my former life, I was nothing more than a lowly red carp. Against all expectations, I entered the royal palace, married into the Merfolk line, and bore a Golden Merman child. But once my husband ascended to the throne, everything changed. He tore out my core essence, and my own son carved up my true form to feed to the ravenous piranhas. All because my sister awakened her dormant bloodline and transformed into a noble white serpent dragon.
My husband sneered down at me.
Without my bloodline, how could you have birthed such a prodigious child? You have no right to sit on the throne as queen. Even my son spat venom at me. You're not my mother. I despise you. Lyra is kind and gentle, and now she's ascended as a white serpent dragon. If she were my mother, she'd never force me into anything. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the very day of the royal consort selection. Kalen, the man who had been my husband, now eagerly reached for my sister's hand. My son, Caspian, too, was reborn, but this time as Lyra's child, just as he had wished. Only now he was nothing more than a black carp. I let out a quiet sigh of relief as I watched Kalen choose her. The hall erupted in shock, but I simply felt a strange calm. Lyra's eyes glistened with infatuation as she stared at Kalen, while he smirked at me with a victorious gleam. That was the moment I understood he too had been reborn. The Carp clan was the weakest of the Eastern Sea. Though I was its rightful princess, both Lyra and I were often ridiculed, for we were still carps. King Theron, ruler of the Merfolk, had 10 sons. The year Lyra and I were sent for the royal selection, 5 princes were to choose their consorts. Every other candidate came from higher-ranked clans. In the end, when the princes made their choices, only Lyra and I remained. I thought I would finally be sent home, but the 10th prince, Kalen, pointed at me. Kalen, in truth, was no more than a black carp himself, the illegitimate son of the king. His rank among the princes was low, yet he chose me, and we were swiftly wed. 5 months later, Kalen transformed into a merman. Not long after, I bore him a son, Caspian, a Golden Merman. Normally, a carp must endure 500 years to become a merman, and another 1,000 before possibly ascending into a Golden Merman. But not all succeed. On Caspian's 100th birthday, Kalen himself ascended as a Golden Merman. The royal shaman declared that father and son would both reach godhood within 2 millennia, far earlier than fate usually allowed. Overjoyed, King Theron abdicated the throne, crowning Kalen as the new king and me as his queen. But the first thing Kalen and Caspian did upon gaining power was betray me. To them, I, a red carp, was a blemish on their glory. They insisted Lyra was the one worthy of standing at their side. They lured me with poisoned wine. Kalen slit open my chest, tore out my core essence, and shattered it. When I reverted to my carp form, they plucked my scales one by one, crafting a robe of red for Lyra. Then, in my son's hands, I was carved apart and cast to the piranhas of the deep. Even now, the phantom scent of their bloodlust makes me shiver. Back in that first life, even King Theron had doubted Kalen's choice. If you must take someone from the Carp clan, why not choose the red carp instead? Not only he, but many in court believed I was the better choice. My mother had been the Carp clan's queen, while Lyra's mother was no more than her attendant, who crept into my father's bed when my mother carried me in her womb. In beauty, rank, and spiritual strength, Lyra was far beneath me. Yet Kalen only knelt before his father, saying, "My heart belongs solely to Lyra. I cannot accept any other." Lyra's cheeks burned red with delight. To her, the illegitimate prince's devotion was a victory. Though a carp princess, she had always lived under scorn, for her bloodline was weaker than mine. But now, Kalen had chosen her openly, rejecting me in front of all. She cast me a triumphant glance as whispers filled the hall. King Theron did not value Kalen greatly, but since the boy was adamant, he gave his consent. And so, in that life, I stood alone in the hall, unwanted, unchosen. The king looked at me with pity. "Ilara, since no one has taken you, you may return to the Carp clan." But Kalen knelt once more. "Father, I recently visited the ancient merman in the abyssal grotto. Though his body has withered with age, he still belongs to our Merfolk clan. Ilara is said to bring fortune to her consort. Perhaps she could marry him so that the Carp clan is not left in shame. The ancient merman Kalin spoke of was the beggar of the Merfolk. He had no clan, no descendants, and had lingered alone in the abyssal grotto for over 5,000 years. His body was so frail, he could barely move, let alone provide for himself. In my past life, it had been Lyra who married him. But on the very night of their wedding, he passed away. Though his death was simply old age, the shaman declared that Lyra had cursed her husband and brought misfortune to the Merfolk. Enraged, King Theron ordered her sealed away in the grotto forever. But soon after, a white serpent dragon burst out from the abyss. It circled the palace twice before descending, transforming into human form. When onlookers crept closer, they realized it was none other than Lyra. A true dragon could only exist after reaching godhood. A serpent dragon, however, was considered the lowest rank of dragonkind. Legend spoke of a handmaid from the celestial dragon palace who had been punished, sent to the mortal world to undergo trials. If she faced mortal danger, she would awaken as a white serpent dragon. And so, people began whispering, "Was this not my sister?" Lyra's name spread like wildfire. Overnight, she became the East Sea's shining jewel. King Theron even built her a palace of her own and presented her with the priceless luminous pearl. Believing Kalin's fabricated story, the king decreed that I was to marry the ancient merman instead. For the sake of my clan, I dared not resist. Within 3 days, I was dressed as a bride and sent to the abyssal grotto. After the ceremony, Kalin strolled up with Lyra clinging to his arm, smirking. "Congratulations, Alara. Without me, you'd still be nothing more than a lowly carp. That old merman may be frail, but at least he'll treat you kindly." The ancient merman was barely alive, too weak to even sit upright. In my previous life, he had died that very night. And back then, Kalin hadn't even accused me of cursing him. That omission in his eyes had been a kindness. I met his smug gaze and answered coldly, "Yes, he is frail, but his true form is still that of a merman." Kalin's expression soured immediately. His own true form was a common black carp, and nothing enraged him more than being reminded of it. He snapped, "Don't act so arrogant. You barely entered the Merfolk clan, yet you already pretend to be superior. What if he is a merman? He's on his last breath. He won't last long. And if you fail to give him a child, do you know what awaits a Baron Merman's consort? Flaying. Dismemberment." Lyra chimed in with her poisonous smile. "Sister, you overshadowed me for centuries. Now it's my turn. Whose fault is it that you never won the 10th prince's favor? He'll soon reach 500 years. Once he becomes a merman, we'll wed. You'd best hope that old man of yours lingers just long enough to watch our wedding." I let out a laugh of scorn. Kalin still dreamed of transforming into a merman? He thought his success in my past life had been his own destiny, when in truth, the credit lay with me. Before my death, my mother had entrusted me with a secret. Our bloodline carried traces of the East Sea Dragon King's youngest daughter. That princess had once descended to the mortal realm, leaving behind descendants among the Carp clan, which meant I too carried dragon blood. Through intimacy, I could pass fragments of that bloodline to my partner, allowing his cultivation to rise rapidly. And the children I bore would be born already infused with this dragon heritage. That was why, in my previous life, Kalin had transformed into a merman so swiftly, and why Caspian had been born a Golden Merman, destined for greatness. I had raised that boy myself, taught him to read, to cultivate, to fight. Yet in the end, he used everything I gave him to carve open my chest and slice apart my true form. You, a worthless red carp, dare call yourself my mother? I am a Golden Merman. My true mother should be noble, like Lyra. But Kalin and Caspian were blind. They truly believed Lyra was a white serpent dragon. Only I knew the truth. Lyra had never truly transformed. Her mother had stolen forbidden techniques from mine, weaving illusions that deceived the eyes of the crowd. I had once planned to reveal the truth to Kalin and Caspian, to tell them the secret of my dragon blood. But before I could, they slaughtered me. To them, I was unworthy, a stain. Very well. This time, let me watch how Kalin manages to transform, without my dragon blood to carry him. After the ceremony, I was dragged into the abyssal grotto. The cavern was pitch black, the air damp and heavy. They tossed me inside without care and sealed the entrance behind me. Feeling my way forward, I caught sight of a faint glow. There, Lying on a slab of glacial stone was the so-called ancient merman. At first glance, he seemed nearly lifeless, eyes closed, breath shallow. But when I drew closer, I realized this stone bed was actually carved from abyssal glacier ice, a rare treasure said to magnify cultivation. I studied his face more carefully. To my surprise, he wasn't the decrepit figure the rumors painted him to be. His features were fine, his skin pale but unlined, his frame slender yet noble. He looked weak, yes, but not grotesque. Something stirred in me. I pricked my finger and let 2 drops of blood fall onto his lips. Almost instantly, his lashes fluttered. He coughed and opened his eyes, fixing me with a piercing gaze that made my heart skip. I quickly explained why I had been sent here, about the forced marriage. He didn't look surprised. Instead, he whispered, "So it's you."
Startled, I denied it.
My mother had once warned me. Our family's secret must never be exposed, or disaster would befall us. The merman only lowered his gaze, thoughtful, before bowing his head. "Then allow me to thank you, my consort. My name is Lysander, but I must admit, I am still weak. Our wedding night will have to wait a few days." My cheeks burned and I stammered, "That's fine." For several days, I continued feeding him drops of my blood. With each offering, strength returned to his body, and even the ice beneath him began to glimmer faintly. By the week's end, he was nearly restored. That night, he drew me into his arms, claiming me fully as his wife. It was then that I noticed a single golden scale gleaming on his lower abdomen. Later, as I lay against his chest, I asked softly, "You're a Golden Merman, aren't you? Then why do the others mock you, as though you were nothing? And your injuries?" He chuckled low in his throat. "I am over 3,000 years old, yet very few have ever seen me, aside from the Dragon King. Long ago, I ventured into the deepest seas to claim this abyssal ice, but the battle nearly cost me my life. To protect my secret, I had another merman, one already dying, serve as my decoy. Somehow, I must have slipped into unconsciousness. Still, I always felt I was waiting for someone." His words struck me. In my past life, it had been Lyra who stumbled into this grotto by mistake. Lysander had perished that very night, but this time, fate had shifted. The one he waited for had always been me. When Lysander was strong enough to leave, he insisted on escorting me out of the grotto. But the moment we stepped outside, Kaelin and Lyra appeared before us. Kaelin sneered, his eyes flashing with contempt. "Alara, you survived? How persistent. But let me remind you, that frail old merman is worth far more than you. Don't drag him down with your reckless antics." I couldn't help but laugh coldly. "My antics? Did you see them with your own eyes?" Before I could say more, Lysander drew me close, his voice sharp. "And who are you, to speak so rudely to my consort?" Kaelin's face turned crimson with fury. "You dare? I am the 10th prince. Do you not kneel before me? Alara, you shameless woman. Already betraying your husband after mere days of marriage? You bring disgrace to the Merfolk clan." Lyra's voice chimed in like poison dripping from honey. "Sister, he's right. Even if your husband is feeble, you are still bound by marriage. To flaunt yourself like this only humiliates our Carp clan further." Before I could retort, Lysander's calm but scathing voice silenced them. "The 10th prince? The king of the Merfolk fathered a Carp? And you expect me to kneel? Learn your own worth before demanding respect. As for you," he turned his gaze on Lyra, "stop spewing nonsense. My consort is the rightful princess of the Carp clan. I have never heard of the queen bearing any other daughter." Their faces went pale, then green with fury. Kaelin shook with anger, pointing at me. "Alara, you." But Lyra quickly regained her composure. She placed a hand over her stomach and smiled sweetly. "Sister, we didn't come to fight. We came to share good news. I'm pregnant. Last night, I dreamed my child was a Golden Merman. He called me mother and said he had chosen me through 2 lifetimes." She leaned forward slightly, eyes glinting. "Your mother was skilled in shamanic arts, wasn't she? Perhaps you inherited some of her gift. Tell me, what do you think this dream means?" Her scheme was obvious, written clearly on her face. How could I not understand? In my past life, Kaelin's fortune had turned the very moment I gave birth to Caspin, a Golden Merman. After centuries of neglect, he suddenly rose to power, gaining the Merman King's favor all because of that child. This time around, he was just as desperate to grasp the same destiny. I looked at the pair of them, smug and self-satisfied, their noses nearly pointing at the heavens. My voice was calm, almost cold. You just accused me of being faithless, called me a disgrace. Yet here you stand, not even married, already expecting a child. Tell me, who is truly shameless? Kaelin's face turned red with fury, his fists clenching as if he wanted to tear me apart. But with Lysander standing firmly behind me, his strength unfathomable, Kaelin didn't dare lift a finger. Before leaving, he gave me a venomous look. Alara, mark my words, the child Lyra carries will be a Golden Merman. I've already chosen his name, Caspian. Even if he hadn't said it, I would have known. In my last life, Caspian had proudly declared that he remembered choosing his mother across lifetimes, and that he had picked a red carp for his second rebirth. Back then, I had been overjoyed, smothering him with hugs and kisses. Never could I have imagined that same reason would one day become the blade he used to end my life. That evening, as usual, I prepared to offer a drop of my blood to Lysander, but he caught my wrist. My consort, have you lost your senses? My injuries have long healed. There's no need for this anymore. I froze, realizing that my emotions over Caspian had clouded my judgment. Lysander gently pried the dagger from my hand. His gaze was steady, sincere. You've been offering me your blood every day. Even a single drop pains me to see. I don't want your sacrifice. Looking into his deep eyes, my heart thudded like a drum. So instead, I leaned forward and pressed him down against the bed. Then no more blood, I whispered. There are other ways to restore strength. At first, he seemed confused, until I loosened his robe with deliberate slowness. His face instantly flushed, his breath quickening as he caught my meaning. From that night on, Lysander and I grew closer, our bond deepening in both heart and body. By the time a month had passed, his body had fully recovered, and even my own cultivation had risen to new heights. That was when Kaelin and Lyra's wedding finally arrived. For half a month, Kaelin had spread word far and wide, boasting that his wedding day would also mark his 500th birthday, the day he would finally transform into a true merman. He invited clans from across the East Sea to witness it. The celebration rivaled even King Theron's coronation in its grandeur. Curious, I insisted Lysander accompany me to watch. On that day, the entire sea was eerily quiet, not a single fish in sight. The shaman declared it a sacred omen, proof that fortune favored Kaelin. His confidence soared higher than ever. Yet as the days passed, the feast concluded, and the wedding ended, Kaelin still showed no signs of transforming. 2 full days and nights went by. Nothing. King Theron's patience snapped. At first, he had been pleased at the prospect of his illegitimate son ascending, but now, after summoning the entire East Sea only to witness failure, he was humiliated. With a furious wave of his sleeve, he stormed off. Enough. How many times have you promised soon? Stop disgracing me further. I have more pressing matters than your nonsense. The crowd began to disperse as well, leaving Kaelin pale and bewildered. This can't be, he muttered in disbelief. The timing was perfect. I was supposed to transform on this day. Why is nothing happening? Before he could grasp an answer, Lyra suddenly screamed. Her hands flew to her stomach, and she collapsed to the ground. Lyra, what's happening? Kaelin rushed forward to catch her as she collapsed. An older woman took one look and cried out, Your Highness, the consort is in labor. Quickly, take her inside. Chaos erupted as attendants carried Lyra into a nearby chamber. Not long after, the midwife returned, holding a pearl that shimmered with golden light. 10th Prince, the consort has given birth to a radiant pearl, she announced proudly. But to my eyes, it was nothing more than a plain white stone. The hall gasped in awe, all eyes locked onto the pearl. It was unusually large, unlike the average merman egg, perfectly smooth and pale as ivory. Still, it was strange that a carp and a black carp could produce such a thing. The royal shaman examined it carefully before declaring, This is no ordinary egg. This is the sign of a Golden Merman. The hall instantly erupted in cheers. Even King Theron, who had been leaving in anger, turned back to caress the pearl with reverence. Shaman, is this truly what I think it is? The shaman bowed deeply. Your Majesty, I would not dare deceive you. The historical records describe the birth of a Golden Merman exactly like this. Combined with the strange omens of the last 2 days, there can be no doubt. King Theron's face split into a grin. Splendid. If this pearl hatches a golden merman, Kaelin shall be named crown prince. The throne will one day be his. In an instant, Kaelin and Lyra basked in glory they had never known before. The so-called Golden Merman egg was expected to hatch within the month. When the day arrived, every clan in the East Sea gathered for the momentous occasion. For thousands of years, the Merfolk had waited for another Golden Merman, an event of legendary importance. The pearl was placed upon the sacred altar. The crowd stood below in breathless silence, waiting. Cracks appeared on its flawless surface. Moments later, the pearl shattered into fragments, and from within emerged a young figure. "Father, Mother, I'm finally out." The boy, Caspian, looked first to Kaelin, then to Lyra. Seeing them together, relief washed over his face. He rushed to them eagerly. "Father, Mother, your son missed you so much." Kaelin and Lyra froze, their faces draining of color. Only then did Caspian notice the uneasy atmosphere. He turned to the crowd with an arrogant scowl. "What's wrong with all of you? A golden merman stands before you, yet none of you kneel?" Silence lingered for a heartbeat, then the hall erupted in laughter. The sound echoed through the altar like thunder. Caspian's face twisted with fury. He clenched his fists, shouting, "Insolent wretches! How dare you mock a golden merman? I'll show you true power today." A golden merman's strength was said to be unmatched, forcing all merfolk to bow under its aura. In my past life, the day Caspian hatched, not a single soul dared meet his eyes. Even the Merman King himself had bent the knee. But this time, reality betrayed him. The laughter only grew louder, more merciless. King Theron's expression turned black. Without a word, he stormed out, his robes whipping behind him. The royal family quickly followed. Why won't they kneel?" Caspian's voice cracked as he turned desperately to Kaelin. "Father, why are they leaving?" Kaelin finally snapped from his shock. His face twisted with rage. He struck Caspian hard across the face, then kicked him to the ground. Dazed, Caspian stumbled toward the bronze mirror at the altar. Through its dull reflection, he saw himself clearly at last. Not a majestic golden merman, just a pitiful, ugly black carp. When Caspian caught sight of his reflection, panic seized him. The red birthmark he had before was gone. He scrambled, trembling, toward Kaelin. "Father, what is happening? Am I not a golden merman? Why am I like this? I do not want to be this filthy carp," he wailed. Under the crowd's stare, Kaelin lost his composure. Gathering every scrap of spiritual energy he had, he lashed out with a palm strike. "Do not call me father. You are not my son. My son is a noble golden merman. You wretched black carp, give me back what is mine." Caspian tried to draw on his power, but nothing answered him. In the life before, his cultivation had been prodigious, his spirit force overwhelming. Now he was powerless, only an ordinary black carp. Kaelin's energy hardened into a blade, slicing Caspian cleanly in two. The creature screamed, a sound that shredded the silence. Kaelin was not satisfied. He fashioned an onslaught of spiritual arrows and rained them down. The mangled, arrow-pierced body wriggled toward Lyra's feet. "Mother, save me," he cried. Lyra shoved him back without pity. "You are not my child. My son is a golden merman, not a carp." Caspian glared at her in disbelief. "Aren't you a carp too?" No one offered him shelter. Desperate, he lunged toward me. "Mother, save me." Something in me reacted before thought. I flung myself over him, using my body to shield him. I looked up at Kaelin. "He is your son. Will you truly kill him in front of everyone?" "The law forbids kin from killing kin, or else banishment follows," I reminded him. But my defense flipped the blame onto me. Kaelin pointed at me, hissing, "It is your doing, you vile woman. You twisted the rites with your mother's shamanic arts. You sabotaged my transformation, turned my son into a carp." At that, Caspian thrust the arrows embedded in his flesh into my arm. Pain flared, and I flung him away. Blood bloomed on my skin where he had driven the shafts. "So it is you, wicked witch. Reverse this, or I will not spare you," Kaelin roared. I stared at Caspian in stunned betrayal. In an instant I realized my mistake. I should have let him die under Kaelin's blade. As the father and son traded insults, rage clouding their faces, someone seized my hand. "You dare to bully my consort in my presence," a voice thundered. "10th Prince, are you blind?" The crowd carried the egg in, guarded it. If anyone tampered with it, should we all be fools? Lysander's words landed like a tether, and the cruel murmur of the assembly fell silent. His strong hand closed around mine, and a calm warmth steadied me. In my former life, I had been trampled even as queen, never defended by anyone. Having someone stand by me felt like a miracle. Kalen spat. You are nothing but some gigolo Alara picked up. How dare you show off? He tried to humiliate Lysander, pointing to my lineage and the shamanic arts. Lysander, taller and composed, replied coldly. If Alara could so easily force fate, would she need to? Could mere shamanic tricks change the nature of two carp into a golden merman? Even deities would struggle. Others murmured, 2 carp producing a golden merman? Impossible. The crowd's whispers sharpened into scorn. Kalen, driven to fury, snatched a nearby sword and lunged. In one casual flick, Lysander sent him sprawling. The assembled people finally understood the truth. The ancient merman was no frail elder. With minimal effort, Lysander bound Kalen in kelp, his face a dark mask. You black carp spirit, hear this. Alara is my consort. Disrespect her again, and I will kill you. Word of Kalen's humiliation spread quickly across the East Sea. His pearl had not produced a golden merman as he had proudly claimed, but a pitiful black carp. The disgrace brought shame to the entire Merfolk clan. King Theron's fury was unmatched. He ordered Kalen and his household confined, forbidden to leave for 100 years without royal permission. The shaman who had been involved was executed, but not before revealing the truth. Kalen had bribed him to spread lies. As for Caspian, his fate was wretched. His carp body never recovered. In human form, he managed only an upper body, with no legs. Kalen, ashamed of him, chained him near the gates like an unwanted creature. Only a few kind-hearted maids pitied him enough to sneak him scraps of food. Meanwhile, Kalen's mind deteriorated. Obsessed, he buried himself in forbidden shamanic texts, scouring old records for a way to replicate the past. He even imprisoned Lyra in a woodshed, surrounding her with bones from mass graves, convinced he could force her into becoming a white serpent dragon. Against all odds, it worked. A month later, a dragon's roar echoed through his palace. Crowds looked up in awe as a dazzling white dragon circled above his residence. Rumors spread that Lyra was no ordinary mermaid, but a celestial dragon sent to the mortal realm for trials. Kalen's pride returned in full force. Though he had failed to sire a golden merman, his wife had now become a white serpent dragon. King Theron rewarded them by building Lyra her own palace and gifting her a luminous pearl. Kalen even hosted a banquet to flaunt his triumph, inviting Lysander and me to attend. As we sat, Kalen could hardly contain himself. He boasted to King Theron, "Father, ancient records state that a white serpent dragon carries the blood of the true dragons. With Lyra at my side, I will surely become not only a merman, but perhaps even a dragon myself." King Theron's interest flickered. He told Kalen, half in jest, that if he managed such a feat, he would abdicate and hand him the clan. Kalen took the words as gospel, kneeling in thanks. His arrogance only swelled when he revealed Lyra was pregnant once again. But the king's mood shifted when his eyes fell on me. "Alara," he asked sternly, "I hear you defied my decree, and what another. Do you know the punishment for ignoring royal command?" Before I could respond, Lysander spoke smoothly. "King of the East Sea, perhaps you've forgotten me?" Only then did Theron realize who sat beside me. At once, his face drained of color. He tried to rise, but found himself rooted in place, Lysander's quiet pressure holding him still. Theron forced a laugh and fell silent, unwilling to provoke further wrath. Kalen, however, was oblivious to the danger. He sneered, "Father, Alara has been married for some time, yet she hasn't borne a child. By our laws, a barren woman should be flayed alive. Perhaps she hides some illness that prevents her from conceiving." Lysander's expression darkened. His voice was sharp as steel. "Whether my consort bears children or not is her choice. If anyone dares to harm her, I will tear them apart myself." Kalen scoffed, calling him a pretty face and daring him to defy royal authority. Theron tugged at his son desperately, his face full of dread, but Kalen refused to stop. Then, suddenly, a wave of nausea struck me. Before anyone could react, I vomited right there at the table. The king immediately summoned the royal physician. After a careful examination, the physician's eyes widened. He bowed and announced, Congratulations. The consort is with child, already over 2 months along. My hands flew to my stomach in astonishment. I hadn't even realized it. Unlike when I carried Caspian, this child had not burdened me with illness or pain. It was as if the little one wished to stay hidden until now. Lysander's joy was radiant. His hand, once poised to strike, instead wrapped protectively around my waist. The hall erupted in chatter, courtiers debating whether it would be a boy or girl. Only Kalen stood apart, his face twisted with hatred as his thunder was stolen once again. Because of my pregnancy, Lysander decided we should leave early. We didn't stay to see the rest of Kalen's banquet. King Theron didn't dare stop us. He personally escorted us out with all the courtesy he could muster. On the way out, I noticed a group of children surrounding another, laughing cruelly. You're just a useless carp. Still crawling around without legs, pathetic. I stepped forward to scatter them. Only then did I realize the one being bullied was Caspian. He was a pitiful sight, his clothes torn, his hair in tangles, his body covered in wounds. He could no longer even stand, only drag himself along the ground. In my past life, I had raised him with love, kept him plump and healthy, shielding him from hardship. Now, seeing him so wretched, all I felt was dread. I turned away, but he grabbed my foot, sobbing, "Mother, don't you remember? You always said a mother and child are connected by heart, that you'd sense if I was ever in danger." A pang shot through me. He remembered those words. Yet despite the devotion I'd given him, he had once grown into a tyrant who bullied the weak. Perhaps it was his true nature all along. Coldly, I met his gaze. "You're mistaken. I never said that. Your mother is Lyra, not me." His face twisted in disbelief. "Elara, you're nothing but a lowly carp. How dare you ignore me? I am a Golden Merman. If you save me now, I'll forgive you. If not, I'll never recognize you as my mother again." Lysander stepped forward, his patience snapping. He kicked Caspian aside. "Mad dog. My consort is not your mother. Stay far away from her." Before we left, I gave Caspian one final remark. "Your words are laughable. I already carry a child of my own. You were never worthy." Lysander led me away as Caspian's enraged shrieks echoed behind us. "Elara, I know you're pregnant. If I were you, I'd never let that child be born. To be your child is a disgrace." I sneered without turning back. Better than being a half-bodied black carp. His rage boiled over. "How dare you mock me? My mother is a white serpent dragon. A dragon. She swore I'll become a Golden Merman soon, you'll see." Foolish. He didn't even realize that the only dragon blood in Lyra came from me. Not long after the banquet, word spread. Lyra was going into labor. But instead of an egg, she produced fish roe. The shaman carefully sealed the roe with spiritual power and placed it upon the sacrificial altar. Soon, whirlpools churned across the East Sea. Unlike last time, there was no eerie silence. Everyone understood that whatever was about to hatch would not be ordinary. The entire clan gathered at the altar. Lysander and I arrived just as the roe began to split. From within emerged what looked like a black serpent dragon. King Theron rushed forward, holding it high. "This is a moment of glory. For the first time, our clan has birthed a serpent dragon." Lysander and I exchanged amused looks, unable to hold back our laughter. The king's expression hardened. "What are you laughing at? Before a black serpent dragon, you should kneel?" Lysander smiled lazily. "Why kneel before a fraud?" With a flick of his hand, golden light struck the creature. Before everyone's eyes, the mighty serpent dragon shriveled and changed shape, until all that remained was an ugly black carp. Kalen staggered back in horror. "Impossible. This was born of my consort, Lyra, a white serpent dragon. How could it be a carp?" Even King Theron was shaken, barely able to stand. Kalen's face twisted with madness. "It's you, Elara. You, and that lover of yours. If not for that cursed golden light, my son would still be a serpent dragon." He charged at us, wild with rage. But Lysander pulled me behind him, his power flaring. In an instant, a radiant Golden Merman appeared, his aura filling the altar. Kalen was thrown back violently, pinned to the ground by sheer force. The entire clan fell to their knees, even King Theron. The Golden Merman's gaze fixed on Lyra. Before he could speak, she collapsed to her knees, trembling. "Mercy, Lord Golden Merman. I never meant to deceive anyone. I only pretended to be a white serpent dragon. It was Kaelin who forced me. Through tears, Lyra confessed everything, the forbidden illusion arts she had inherited from her mother, once a servant to mine. She admitted she used those arts to create the image of a dragon, and even Aro had been cloaked in illusions. It was all Kaelin, she cried, pointing at him. He's nothing but a black carp himself. He dreamed of becoming a Golden Merman and threatened my life if I refused to help him. Kaelin, realizing the truth, broke down completely.
No.
It's not true. You are a white serpent dragon, he shouted desperately. My son isn't some worthless black carp, he's a black serpent dragon. He repeated it like a man gone mad, but with the aura of a true Golden Merman present. All forbidden illusions crumbled. Caspian, who had been forcing his merman form, reverted to his real body. Yet Caspian still refused to accept reality. He lay sprawled on the ground, trembling, unable to move. The matter was settled. King Theron immediately declared Kaelin stripped of his royal status and exiled. As for Lyra, for her deception against the crown, she was sentenced to the deepest dungeons to await the cruel punishment of bone stripping. The moment she heard, Lyra collapsed like her spine had been shattered, begging for mercy over and over, but King Theron's command was final. Guards dragged her away, without hesitation. Just then, Lysander shifted into human form. Remembering the fish Rose still left in the abyssal grotto, he prepared to leave. But Kaelin, consumed with rage, suddenly lunged at me with a sword. It was you, Alara, he roared. You knew all along this was fake. You wanted me to be humiliated. You wanted revenge. But before his blade could reach me, Lysander kicked it aside and gripped Kaelin by the throat. You lowly black-corn spirit beast, he growled. Dare to touch my consort again, and I'll end you myself. Kaelin, choking, gasped out one last defiance. Even if I lost, Alara, without me, you would never have given birth to a Golden Merman either, right? Before his bitter words could settle, a radiant golden light burst outside, dazzling the entire hall. A small Golden Merman swam gracefully toward us. Could this child have come from Alara? Someone whispered in awe. One by one, everyone dropped to their knees. A Golden Merman was the supreme ruler of the seas. None could defy it. The little one circled me a few times before transforming into a tiny figure and dozing off peacefully in my arms. I stared down in disbelief. This was my child. How can it be? How could you have given birth to a Golden Merman? Kaelin stammered, unable to comprehend. A sharp crack echoed through the water. Kaelin's eyes widened in disbelief as Lysander snapped his neck without hesitation. His lifeless body was cast aside. Then Lysander transformed fully into his magnificent Golden Merman form. Holding our child close, I climbed onto his back, and together we left the abyssal grotto. I heard a faint voice call, "Mother," behind me, but I did not look back. This time, in this life, my only bond was with my child. Lysander and I departed the East Sea, walking the mortal world hand in hand. We raised our little Golden Merman, who would one day become the new Merman King. In time, Lysander welcomed his lightning tribulation and achieved godhood, but he chose to remain by my side and our child's. This life, unlike the last, was filled with joy and peace. Together, we finally found eternal happiness.